All right, folks. Good afternoon, all. The team from Skill Up, right? You ready? Should we start? Right. I hope I'm audible to you all. Good afternoon, all. Once again, I'm Vinod here. Welcome to the session of Internet of Things, and the security related to the Internet of Things. So, by and large, we'll be talking about IoT in a broader spectrum and what kind of a security threats do we have in IoT, and what all the scope of security implementation do we have related to the Internet of Things. Give you a brief background, I'm the speaker Vinod here. I've been working with the enforcement agencies, especially on darknet and internet cryptocurrency related cases as an advisor, and also a research scholar in the dark web area. I deliver 35 programs in cybersecurity. My specialized area of cybersecurity is into industrial control systems, risk forensics, threat intelligence, threat hunting, and IoT embedded systems, automotive and avionics. I've been empaneled trainer with Visaka, AC Council, CompTIA, quite some time. So I'm glad to have you all here and to take part of this particular webinar to talk about the Internet of Things as well as the security threats that we have. So as a cybersecurity enthusiast, been dealing with various platforms. One of those important areas that I have identified is Internet of Things, where the security is a primary concern as the technology has grown. So if you look into the Internet of Things, so broadly, when we talk about an internet is comprised of three layers. One is a layer which we talk about surface web, whatever the data that you could access on a clear web. Whatever you ask Google, Google would reply back to you and provide you the data and the inputs related to the web. So this is what we call it as a surface web. Apart from this, we have another layer called as deep web, which is where we have a credential data. So if you look into the internet, so the first layer of the internet consists of surface web, which has just the 4% of the data, overall data, that is there on internet. So that you have something called as a deep web, which has around 6% of the data. And then you have something called as a dark web, which has now the rest of 96% of the data, and rest of the 4 to 6% of the data is available over here. So this is how it is being spread across between deep and dark. So one of the biggest concerns that we have is Internet of Things that has come into existence, like where we find out Internet of Things has enabled mobility as well as cutting edge technology, which is given and access to the communication with seamlessly with the endpoints. So if you see, it could be in the healthcare sector, it could be in business merchandising as well as fleet management, industrial sector, agriculture sector. Everywhere you find Internet of Things that are there being used for quite some time. Right from your point of sale machines. Let me ask you one simple question. Now, all of your thoughts in the chat window. One of those questions I would put for this: how many computers do you have in and around right now? Right now, with you right now. So what are they? Could be a mobile phone, be no, be a smart device or a smartwatch like that. How many computers are there? So put forth your thoughts. We'll discuss on this topic at the end of the session in the question and answers. These IoT devices are also computer nodes. Basically, they are exposed to the internet, and they have a similar kind of a threats that we have for a web application or any of the server. Similar kind of the IoT as well. So that's something which we are going to discuss in this particular webinar session. So when we talk about Internet of Things, where it all we find right from home automation applications, like could be in Alexa, could be in smart detectors, could be a smart refrigerator today, could be smart geysers, smart air pumps. Everywhere you find the word smart is tagged with IoT devices, which are connected some way. Could be enabled with the Bluetooth, could be enabled with the Wi-Fi. So various types of communication protocols are being used to connect with this IoT environment. Having said that, how this IoT evaluation of IoT has taken place. If you look at this particular slide, I'm trying to put across where we started. So it was just a pre-internet phase, what we call it as an before even a WWW has come into existence, where we have a fixed or a mobile telephone. Could be an SMS, which is what we refer it as in pre-internet, where the GPS or edge communication was not enabled. From there, our internet has grown to a next level, so which is what we call it as an internet of content. That is where the websites have come into existence. In 90s, we have less than 1 million websites across the world. Few hundred, few thousands, I would say. But right after 90s into 95, 2000, 2010, and 2024 today, we have 1 billion plus websites, which are increasingly, which has enabled an email access, information access, and entertainment on the internet. So internet was used not just as a medium of communication, but also a communication of email and entertainment. From internet of content, we moved on to the next level, which is what we call it as an internet of services. This is where the e-productivity has come into existence. That is what we refer to as citizen chat platforms, or could be an ERP systems or a CRM systems which have come into existence. And a simple word, as an outline, we could say that, for example, the Me-Seva centers or E-Seva centers that you have, where you have now government organizations running their services or catering their services through this citizen chat systems. That's one of the example of Web 2.0. That's where the e-productivity is got into the lives of common citizens. Further to that, as a first generation e-commerce platforms like eBay, Amazon, all of this has come into existence. That's what we refer it as in Web 2.0. From Web 2.0, we moved on to the next level, which is what we call it as an Internet of People. Let me know how many of you have ever heard a word called as an Orkut. And let put forth your knowledge about this particular domain called as Orkut. So it's one of the social media sites. Like how you have a Facebook, X, YouTube, Skype has come in picture. And UGC platforms have been raised. User generic content platforms have come into it. Could be an Vimeo, could be a YouTube. Multiple types of platforms are coming to existence. So this is where, with the internet connectivity, the entire world has become a global village. From here, we moved on to next level. That is what we call it as an Internet of Things. And this is the topic on which we are discussing now, which would talk about a machine-to-machine communication. Way back in 90s, this machine-to-machine communication was more or less like a theoretical, more or less like a science fiction movie. Like if you would have seen Terminator 1, Terminator 2, right? Terminator Resurrection. All of this is a series of a man-to-man, machine-to-machine communication. So it's like a science fiction by then. But over a period of time, when it emerged from Internet of content to services to the people, the next level that we have reached to Internet of Things. This is where identifying a particular object or a thing, tracking that, monitoring, metering that, automation, actuation, and payments like point of sale machines is one of the Internet of Things. Let's say that, which you use at the shops. So they have come into existence. At every level, we started using a tag called as smart. A smart technology is coming. So internet appears everywhere in the world today. So primary connection between the people. Internet. It has become a primary medium. Today, if you look at it, the internet, the growth or the connectivity, how to what extent the internet has come into our lives or no, the usage of internet. So at least multiple dozens of times we would use Google in a day. Without that, nothing would work for us. So without internet, there's more or less no communication. So more than GSM line calls, we started using more often to IP calls, IP-based calls, or WhatsApp calls, Skype call, whatever you call. So this is how the internet wide usage has come, which has given a great scope for connecting the internet with using a Wi-Fi based smart devices or a Bluetooth based smart devices, where Internet of Things would control all of this. One of the example, prime command and control examples that we give is like Alexa. Alexa, which would connect to your home automation devices and which would configure to take the control from Alexa so that you could monitor, you can have a seamless interaction into it. IoT devices, fairly, physical objects that are embedded systems with the electronic softwares and sensors. This also enables to exchange the data between one device to the other device. So it's a combination of an electronic device, a software, and a sensor. So put together is what IoT is being, and exchanging the data between this. So it could be a MQTT protocol, it could be a Wi-Fi protocol, it could be a Bluetooth protocol. So various types of communication protocols based on the requirement, based on the adaptation, based on the implementation of that IoT has come in. Now we started seeing these days on the automotives, on the cars, like they say that internet inside. So it's enabled everywhere. That's what I'm trying to put it. Earlier, these things are limited to something called cyber physical systems. Industrial computers, which is what referred as CPS, cyber physical systems, are connected with OT and IoT. Now today, this IoT is moving to a next level, which is what called as an AIoT, artificial intelligence enabled IoT. So with the implementation of IoT, automation has come in each and every front. May it be a smart grid where you use energy generators, turbines, or windmills. From there, you generate the power right to the distribution point to the end. Now, utilization at the homes. How much of the power is being used from the solar, which is mounted on top of your home, and how much is being used from the grid or a power grid or a power line, and how much is to be the bill needs to be paid. Earlier, it was good old days where the electricity department used to come to each home to home and check the meter reading. Based on that, the bills were generated. But today, it's everything is smart. They're smart meters. So they poll the data and they basically send this data back to the HMI, human machine interface server, or centralized billing server. Smart transportation. Oh, it was a tough thing back then, 20 years back, or 15 to 20 years back, to track the ships, to track the planes when they are middle of the air, in their middle of a sea. But today, you have a tracking, absolute tracking of entire end-to-end communication fleet. It could be a vehicles, could be the traffic lights, could be the lights which are there on the roads, throughout your infrastructure. So parking meters, everything has been automated with this IoT. In a retail segment, you see that point of sale machines where you tap your card, swipe your card, which is with a Wi-Fi enabled card, or could be an NFC, near field communication enabled card, whatever it could be. So they're all enabled with IoT. Healthcare, you see that today the MRIs have come into existence, which has enabled IoT enabled, which could connect to the patient and take the entire scan. So it could be implants like a pacemaker in the heart, could be an emergency response. All of this is a part of patient tracking. All of this is a part of the IoT today. So consumer level, it's refrigerators, geysers, air cons, now TVs, whatnot. So including your lighting, your fans, everything is part of the applications, IoT application. So that's where right from automation, home automation to the industrial automation, everything is connected with IoT. Could be a smart roads, could be smart lighting, intelligent shop, could be a noise, urban maps, tracking the water leakages using the IoT devices, sensing what kind of a pressure is being sent, what kind of, let's say today, most of the gated communities, the gas lines are being supplied through the pipes internally. You don't need to buy a cylinder and keep it. So this entire supply has been managed by the IoT devices, which will sense the pressure, based on which it will say that, hey, look, now in this particular home, this much of the gas is left, and this is what required. So this is how the technology has been grown into enormous folds. How exactly this IoT architecture would work? IoT architecture is distributed across 5 layers. If you guys are familiar with the OSI model, how many layers are there in OSI model? Right. So put forth your thoughts in the chat window. Out of that, 5 layers out of this OSI model are comprised and concised together, or put together, made as an 5-layered architecture. Layer 1 is an edge layer. This is where the actual technology would start working, where you have a sensing and identification devices like GPS, smart device, RFID scanners. Like at toll gates, when you go to the toll gates, you would be seeing RFID scanners in place, or in showrooms as well as malls. You'd be finding RFID device tracker, and could be the various other types of temperature, pressure sensors that you have at the edge layer. The access layer, you have network communication, network construction, like various types of networks that you could connect with. And layer 3, we'll talk about processing the information, like connecting, how exactly the IoT devices have been connected and what type of data is being pulled in the centralized locations. And layer 4, talk about a middleware, which would talk about what are all the different types of HMI, or could be the interfacing architectures that are required, could be the various types of servers or the gateways which connect with them. And application layer is actual usage. Run smart grid, could be run building, could be run smart monitoring, and various reasons which this IoT has been. So the different activities right from environment. Am I audible to you all, folks? Right. I think there's some network glitch or the internet. So it could be an acoustic. It could be positioning, presence of the center, proximity, identifying acceleration or tilting. Could be an electromagnetic emissions, tracking them, identifying and tracking the leaks, loads and the torques, chemicals, gases, or whatever, flow management. For all this, you have various sets of devices that are being used as a part of the IoT architecture. So what are all the communication protocols that are used in the IoT? Primarily starts with Wi-Fi. Like you have like a 4G, LTE, GPRS, 3G, Bluetooth, Zigbee protocol. It could be a Z-Wave protocol, ANT protocol, NFC, RFID, or the various types of protocol. In the industrial sector, we have a PLC, -3, DNP3. Various types of communication protocols are being used. So each one of them have its own importance in terms of depends upon what kind of an architecture that you wanted to deploy in IoT. Based on that, you would be choosing the communication protocol, relevant communication. So basically, this is how IoT communication would run. So you have devices in place. From these devices, could be a smart lock, could be the temperature and pressure sensors, could be the smart cam, could be Alexa. All of them are connected to a gateway called as an IoT gateway. IoT gateway. From this IoT gateway, it will be connected to the cloud server and also interacts with the actual device user, mobile user who could connect through the internet. This is why we call them as an Internet of Things. These are the primary protocols at the application layer which is used on the IoT, Internet of Things. One is a CoAP, Constrained Application Protocol, which could now deal with a specific application requirements constrained to a specific purpose. MQTT protocol is Message Queue Telemetry Protocol, primarily being used on the OT sector, operational technologies sector, which is what like a manufacturing division is there, right? So a manufacturing company or a factory, so where you deploy this IoT, MQTT is primarily used. It could be a RESTful HTTP, a representational state transfer. Could be an XMPP, extensible messaging and presence protocol, is being used as part of the IoT technologies. So what are all the cloud service providers do we have in IoT? One is Bluemix, IBM Bluemix, AWS IoT Hub, Azure IoT, Open Sensors, Verizon ThinkSpace, or various types of technology providers. We have who has a sensors data consumers from which it connects to the cloud. The cloud it connects to the various other endpoints from which basically the sensor publishers would publish the data. So whatever the edge layer data is there, edge layer data would be sent to next layer, network layer, and the middleware layer, access layer, network layer, and middleware layers. So what are the challenges do we have in IoT? Primary challenges. IoT space is quite fragmented. When we say that, there's no standard, standards which are being particularly designed or defined for the manufacturers to follow. Although we can rely upon the protocols and functional protocols and their application methods basing on which you can now develop an IoT device. But the point is, along with that, there should be some kind of security standardization and the ways through which basically the manufacturing would take place. All of this has to be structured, and this is one of the challenge because of fragmented. If you see every IoT devices manufacturing in China, in a country like China, it's like a home shops. So where now they have at homes they manufacture, they develop these IoT devices in this. But the point is that the quality check, performance or stabilization check is a challenge is because there is no standard that is being followed. Managing and fostering rapid innovation is a challenge for the governments. Then implementation of the privacy and security is another challenge for them. Absence of the governance across these IoT devices. So maintaining the privacy, maintaining the security of device, not to get exposed, is one of the challenges. Then you have absence of the governance. There is no one specific governance method that is derived for this Internet of Things. We find a vulnerability, internet attacks, vulnerability to the internet attacks. There's another challenge that we have in IoTs. So this list, whatever you're seeing right now, right from the weak passwords to the insecure network services to ecosystem, insecure ecosystem interfaces, lack of security update, use of insecure outdated components, using insufficient privacy protection, secure data transfer and storage, lack of device management, default settings, and hardening. So all of this is actually referred as an OWASP top 10 IoT vulnerabilities. What is a vulnerability? Vulnerability is often referred as a weakness of the system, through which basically attacker will attack. A threat will evolve, through which a threat will evolve, because of which it would undergo a risk. So such kind of vulnerabilities are being found and addressed in this top 10 vulnerabilities. The most important thing is there are close to about 2 million IoT devices data that is available online. Right from the smart locks to whatnot. Most of it is available online. Example. Let me share the entire screen here. See here. Do you see the browser? Please confirm. All right. So thanks for the confirmation. So, for example, you type IoT on this. Let's see. So you'll find a lot of IoT devices online. Close to about 14,000 devices are shown with a single click. Where exactly these IoT devices are located, what type of an application it is running, right? All this information. So this kind of data is exposed online. Close to about 2 million plus IoT devices data was completely found to be vulnerable as per the recent report from the Consumer Affairs. One of those is now identifying weak and guessable passwords. When you go to the internet, you'll be finding guessable passwords. IoT. you'll be finding those passwords, guessable and hard-coded passwords from the IoT database, which can be easily brute forced, publicly available, unchangeable credentials. Because most of the times, this username and password related to IoT devices is hard-coded inside the device. That's one big challenge, because of which password brute force attack become easy. Insecure network services, unwanted doors on the IoT devices are being opened, like FTP, SSH protocol, Telnet. These ports are open. So which will really, expose to compromise of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of those devices. Insecure ecosystem that it uses is like, uses various types of APIs, backend APIs, as well as cloud and mobile. So majorly, they don't have an authentication, proper authentication authorization, or standardized authentication authorization. So weak encryption, lack of input and output filter, all of this is a challenge. Lack of secure update mechanism. So firmware validation on a device is a challenge, though they use the checksums. It happens over the air, which is what we call it as an OTA. So the updation of the firmware related to IoT device happens on the over the air. So a person who is sitting between that firmware server and the IoT device, if he sniffs an unencrypted communication, so that becomes one of the biggest challenge in protecting the IoT devices. And there is no anti-rollback. If something goes wrong from the device to roll back, it's a challenge. Notification of security changes due to updates is also not there. It's one more reason why it is vulnerable. Insecure and outdated, using outdated components. So like, for example, when you go to the sites like CVE details, CVE details, you would be finding, the moment you say IoT, you'd be finding tons of vulnerabilities. You see, they are called as known vulnerabilities. This is arise because they might have been, if you use the same component, a known vulnerability component, it will fall into the hands of wrong hands, or it might fall into the wrong hands, like an hackers or malware, could be anything. Third-party software libraries comprised of a supply chain now would be one challenge, and third-party hardware components, because if that supply chain vendor takes a hit, it will definitely affect the IoT devices environment. Usage of insecure and outdated components, like where vulnerabilities like meltdown vulnerabilities, Spectre, or a heartbleed kind of vulnerabilities. So these kind of components, usage, again, the same environment would be one of the biggest challenges in IoT. Then you have something called insufficient privacy protection, where you insecurely, improperly, without permission, would be doing this. So where the personal information on the IoT device get exposed. Have you ever seen something like, let's say you are in an airport, you have enabled the Wi-Fi on your mobile phone, and you started finding a lot of hotspots in and around you. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that there are multiple, same with the same name, various Wi-Fi hotspots are being showcased with the same name, right? So these are now one way through which improperly security has been implemented in terms of default passwords are not being changed, or default SSIDs are not being changed, because of which exploitation might take place. So privacy protection is a big challenge here. Insecure data transfer and storage. So lack of encryption. Why lack of encryption? We never know. Let's assume that I'm an IoT manufacturer. I manufacture this device. I would never know which part of the world, which corner of the world this IoT device would be used, and whether they are equipped with the encryption usage or not. So that's the reason why I don't implement, as a manufacturer, I won't implement any type of encryption on top of it. And this gives hand-holding to the attacker so that they can read the information, entire information in a plain text format. Lack of device management. Device management life cycle is not being properly planned, where a constant security testing should take place on those devices which are being manufactured and sold in the market. Where organizations fail to do that, that would lead to a lack of device management. Usage of a specific communication with the device. What are all the monitoring probes or the possible data points that could be identified to capture the data? That's not good. No. Insecure default settings. Most of the times we buy something, all that we do is, for example, let's say Wi-Fi router is there. All that we do is when we buy a Wi-Fi router and bring it to home, we configure the IP address and DHCP. Then we configure the ISP, Internet Service Provider details. After that, maximum that we could do is change the WEP key or WPA key, wireless pre-share key, or maybe we'll be changing the password of the router. But the default configuration, whatever is there in the router, not many people would take a chance to change it. So that can actually lead to a security compromise. So it's very important to change the default settings from the IoT devices. Do not deploy as it is basis. Lack of physical hardening process. So if I have an access to a particular camera which is outside now, and which I can open that camera and take the smart card inside it, or maybe take that camera and connect it to my laptop and try to identify the configuration, the USB pin, or maybe flashing the storage chip of the camera, a CCTV camera, would be a very big threat. Where they go, and now how you have seen in movies like Fast and Furious, right? So where they can track the end-to-end devices. In a similar way, they can take control of any of the cameras once they have access to these cameras physically, at least one camera. So where they go get the configuration and they understand where all the shortfalls or pitfalls are, and then they launch them. So these are the kind of devices which they could use for portraying. It's a kind of IoT attack scenario that you could find, which could exploit. So where attacker will try to attack on the servers, or could be on the network, or could be on the devices. For this, there are two ways attacker can use. One is creating a fake server. For example, the server name is A, creating a similar kind of a fake server by using methods like IP spoofing. IP spoofing, or maybe like ARP spoofing. And cloning the device IDs of original device IDs and creating a fake or a rogue devices, so that the network will not check any other parameters. So it will see whether this IP address is in my scope or not. If it is there, it will give a communication established even for the fake or the rogue devices. That's one way through which basically an IoT attack might take place. Countermeasures, defensive methods or countermeasures that we could take for this IoT security would be using an strong passwords and sanitizing every possible input fields would sanitize. That means that whatever the dialog box that you have given a provision to input, user input for a provision for a user input, that has to be hardened, and you need to disallow the weak passwords. Weak passwords shouldn't be allowed at all. Then insufficient authentication authorization, where you use a strong passwords for authentication. Enable the two-factor authentications on the devices. Insecure network services, ensure all the devices operate with the minimal ports active. And do not make any of the network ports or service ports available on a pluggable devices. UPnP should not be allowed. So, which is a plug and play. UPnP stands for plug and play devices. So, this should not be allowed on the gateway. The moment you allow this, so any rogue device, like in this scenario, I've created rogue devices here. Any of these rogue devices can be connected if on the gateway UPnP is enabled. Lack of transport encryption, where traffic is encrypted between system components, SSL and TLS implementation, privacy concerns. So of this is one of the reasons. Then you have privacy concerns where you ensure PII stands for personally identifiable data, right? This data has to be protected. The personally identifiable data has to be protected, and non-sensitive data needs to be analyzed. Then you have a data retention. There should be a data retention policy should be in place so that it becomes easier to retain those data and deploy that data as per the requirements. Using of a insecure cloud interface, like whatever the cloud service providers that you are using, you need to review those cloud service providers, check for the vulnerabilities, identify cloud-based web interfaces that are there, and then ensure that cloud interfaces use the transport encryption. Disallow the weak passwords. You need to also deploy an account lockout mechanism for the to eradicate the rogue mobile applications getting connected to the IoT environment. So that's another sufficient security configurable, where you need to ensure security options that are made available. Ensure that encryption options are made available. Secure logging is available in this. Then insecure software and firmware or firmware. Ensure all the system devices have update capability, can be updated quickly when vulnerabilities are discovered. Also important to identify poor physical security, where tampering of devices physically should be restricted. There should be a physical security to be placed and ensure that those devices are not reachable easily to any of them. The tampering will not take place. These are the primary things. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead with your questions. And thanks for hearing me out on this IoT security webinar. Thank you all. I'm ready to take the questions. Yeah, look, that's God's eye. That's one example. So any specific questions, I'll be to answer. Yes, that's 7 layers of OSI model proceeding. Right, thanks all. Abhishek, that's a broad question that you have asked. Cybersecurity is a vast area. So in that, what is that you're looking forward? Whether it is related to information security, whether you're looking forward for an now IoT security area or a OT security area, want to get into the automotives. So prima facie, what I would suggest you is to take a course which is agnostic in nature. That is like not dependent to any of the specific technology or a tool. So first take that and then go for the certification is just a credential of what you have learned. Most important thing is that how much knowledge have you gained in this area. So that's what makes you a cybersecurity professional. And then the governance on IoT devices goes something like that, or like this. So there has to be, for example, let's say you have a gated community. So you have a detailed layout which has been permission has been given by a municipal authority. So there is a particular surface area now which has been designed and defined. So then you can implement the devices and which has been notified at one particular point. But how about devices which are there in the next to this particular gated community? So is those were those devices have any kind of a control, or is the government having an uphold of on top of the infrastructure that has been deployed? So can it monitor them? So what kind of an usage is being done on the IoT devices? That's where the governance challenge would come. Firewall security is always there. I guess that it's a firewall security you're talking, Venkat Narasimha. So yes, firewall security is most important at a gateway level as well as at the device level. Device level, you need to implement something like an AppArmor or SE Linux white listing of these devices. Now, implementing IP tables on the devices would be quite helpful. As of now, there is no regulatory authority on the IoT servers. That would be a specific requirement, Asif. Maybe in future, definitely yes. Will suggest skill up right to come up with this session. Of course, there is a challenge, Santosh, with this internet inside kind of an architectures. That's where the major energies are going in automotives, especially into the security area. Exploitations that takes place over there. So I hope all of your questions have been answered. If anything left out, please let me know. I have a few more minutes left. Protecting an email account, Alok, multi-factor authentication, single sign-ons, and tagging them these days. Tag them with your facial recognition, or could be with your biometric enabled laptops if you are using. Ensure that it is tagged with that. How can we change IP of a CCTV and our personal access? That's a long question. So this changing of an IP address needs your special skill sets. So you need to take a deep dive into it. I hope what you are asking is how we can remotely change a CCTV IP address. Actually, without doing that, other than the purpose of security testing, would be illegal. If you want to do it, in a legal way, so you need to have the permission in place. Then you can do the testing, and there are the tools which are available to take access of the CCTVs. It's not a new or old things in place, Alok. It has all got to do with how exactly have you deployed this architecture? What is that your requirement? Have you deployed as you planned? And what kind of security have you taken? What are all the security measures have you taken up? Prashanti, see, when you want to get into cybersecurity, from any academic background, anyone can actually get into cybersecurity and adapt to it. For that, most important thing is that you should be a cybersecurity enthusiast as a first eligibility or a prerequisite, I would say. So if you have an enthusiasm into cybersecurity, I would say that Start learning, understanding computer architectures and network architectures, then get into the security fundamentals. From there, you start doing the certification or take any particular tool from there. Exactly, Santosh. So automotive security is one of the area which I teach. So basically, in automotive security, what happens is majority of the exploitation happens at a ECU level, at an engine level. There are the places where now key fob is very small thing. Actually, uh, stealing a wireless key, the code of a car. Apart from that, there are a lot of other big challenges we have in autonomous cars. Quantum computing is a larger subject, Ranjit. So I'll tell you, we are evolving, right? Human race has been evolving from a long time, and we always come up with the new technologies in place. So one of those new technologies, essentially, that we look forward from a long time is deep learning, which is what we call it as machine learning and artificial intelligence, which we are seeing, is a huge applicability in every nook and corner of this too. The similar to quantum computing, actually optimize the computing power and would be quite helpful in terms of mathematically growing or computational power to the next level by using this quantum computing. One of the examples that you see, the blockchain technology, right, where the nodes put together create a web or could create a network, and then you can have a shared responsibility. You can process the things much better way. So in a similar way, quantum computing will have a next level processing power. A lot of bug bounty options are there, Rahul. So you can go with just try on Google. So you'll be finding n number of IoT bug bounty programs. Even Google Hall of Fame or Google bug bounty programs also have IoT related. All right, Sridhar, thank you. Prashanti, Sridhar, Ranjit. I think last 3 minutes, folks. If you have any questions, you can shoot. If not, we can call it a day. Yes. Do some research, Santosh. IoT pen testers have checklists which are defined, proven, and time tested. So you have a lot of resources available online on Google and GitHub. So they would be the best mentors for you. All right, then. Have a great day ahead. And I think there are few more questions. All right. Thanks all. Have a great day.